Hello everybody, we are happy to present to you Mr. Emiel Brok, ambassador from Suse, who is going to present about the perfect storm, open source first in the European Union and beyond. So we know it's only about Europe, but we hope it's very inspiring for other parts of the world too. And Emiel is laughing because I am telling something that he already is going to do. The floor is yours, Emiel.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear and see me? Because in the live stream I have on my other screen, I don't see any live coverage yet. So when I get a thumbs up, I will continue. I don't see.
Emiel, you can continue, but it's on YouTube, so there's a 30-second delay.
Oh, right, a 30 seconds delay. Well, hello everyone, 30 seconds ago. My name is Emiel Brok, and today I'm going to talk about perfect storm. And as Eric said, it's not just for Europe, because high important security is relevant for anyone in the whole world. But I come to that later. So the perfect storm, what we're going to talk about is open source first, and specifically in the EU, correct, but I show you it's relevant for everyone. So this is me. I am open source ambassador at Suse, and let me check one moment. Here we go. I am for Suse representing open source. I'm talking about open source all over the world. And in this particular case, I am presenting open source technologies specifically as a lobby to many people around the world in the politics, in the policy side. So let me see how that works. Suse, the company that I represent, we have as our vision and mission, we have bringing the infinite potential of open source to the enterprise. And that is so important for us, open source, that as a proof, I always talk about two products that we've recently bought. They were proprietary pieces of software. We bought them and we made them open source. So they were proprietary, and we are now in the process of making them open source. NeuVector already is GPL licensed, and StackState, both two very important Kubernetes management tools, will be open source as well. Regarding the topic of today, open source policy and lobbying for open source among public administration, I am not a disclaimer. Sorry, I'm not a disclaimer. I have a disclaimer for you, but I'm not a lawyer. And to make it even worse, I'm not a techie either. I am marketing and sales. I have a marketing and sales background, and I try to talk about open source as much as I can, and I always say, if I'm able to understand it, that means that majority of the people can understand it. So I try to explain difficult technologies in such a way that anyone can understand. Suse nowadays is focusing on four major products, four major business units, everything around Linux. Of course, Suse Linux Enterprise Server, Cloud Native, our Kubernetes management with everything on top of it, Suse Edge, so microservices, and where there is no connection to internet, any computer that is not SLE, not Suse Linux Enterprise, and AI. So now to the perfect storm. What is a perfect storm? A perfect storm, according to Wikipedia, is a confluence of events that drastically aggravates a situation. In other words, many things happen at the same time, and they are creating a much bigger event. So what is the first element of this storm that I see? I have two numbers for you here, and the live stream on YouTube is 30 seconds later. So you can try to guess when you hear this. I will tell, because these numbers, they actually represent two important elements. 25 is the number of the average number of appliances in a household in the Netherlands 25 years ago in 2000. And last year they did the same investigation again, and they figured out that it was 131 on average in a household computerized appliances. So what you see, first element of this storm is that there are more and more appliances. If we look at the second element of this storm, we look at complexity. You see here a light not bulb from around probably quite an old one compared to one which is out now. So you see that there are not only more appliances, but the appliances that are there also become more and more complex. So we have now two elements: more appliances and more complex appliances. What's the third element in this storm? The third element is the turbulence happening around us. We have today people from all over the world. Here in the Netherlands, in Europe, we are quite concerned what's happening in Ukraine, Russia. But you see that from all over the world, there is more and more pressure on having your security up to date. You don't want to have hackers coming in, and you see now that because of the international turbulence, more and more dangerous coming following this turbulence. So if you have those three elements together, international turbulence, there are much more appliances, and the appliances that are there are more complex. That means we need to make sure that we have our security up to date. And then you can say the fourth element in this storm is that European legislation, or even global legislation, because we have people from outside of Europe here as well. I'd say, yes, there absolutely is an element which makes it even more important to protect yourself. And in Europe, we are now looking at 4 different regulatories coming to us. It's NIS2. I will talk about that a lot more in this presentation. There is the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act, obviously. There is the DORA, so specifically for digital operations. And there's the PCI DSS, which is important for the banking industry. So it's really on different aspects coming towards us. Us is in this case open source, but any IT company. If we're going to look deeper into the NIS2, is it relevant for us to have our security up to date? Well, I would definitely say yes, because this is Article 21 out of the NIS2 appliance, and it says that if now consumers are being hurt, that the management level of an organization, they are responsible up to 10 million euro per incident. And to make it even more interesting, at this moment, and probably that will not happen, you as a company cannot insure your C-level, your executive level, for this liability. That means that if they make wrong decisions or no decision, which can also be a decision, and your customers and eventually the end customer is hurt, then you are liable as a person, as an individual, up to 10 million per per incident. In other words, you better make sure that you have your security up to date. And then how can you become NIST compliant? It's not just filling in a 200 pages questionnaire. It is really that there is an objective international institute which does this check whether or not you are NIS2 compliant. So is it relevant to you? Let's look into that. If you are living in any of the countries here that are green and your company is over 10 million revenue, or you have more than 50 people working for you, that means that you have to apply with the NIS2 regulations. They started and they were effective from the 18th of October last year. That means that anyone living in this country is responsible and is liable for it. And then what's very important, what you see here, EAL4 Plus, is the evaluation at 4 plus level. I will talk about that more in the following slides. So let's look deeper into if you are liable, yes or no. If you are C-level of a company and you are working in any of those critical defined sectors as mentioned here, and as I said earlier, I repeat, more than 50 people working for you, or more than 10 million annual revenue, that means you are liable. So you think, okay, my sector is not here. Am I fine? Maybe not, because also other critical sectors were defined. And also anyone working in these sectors is liable. By the way, if anyone has questions during the presentation, and it is possible to ask, Richard, feel free to jump in at any time. If I'm able to answer the questions, I'm absolutely love to have this interaction. So let's say you are not living in any of the countries on the earlier map, and you're not working in any of these sectors, and your company or organization that you work for is smaller than 50 employees or 10 million revenue. Does that mean that it's not liable for you, that it's not relevant for you to have this level of security that I'm going to talk about later? I would say it's not for nothing that within the European Union, we said that NIS2 is a high level of security. It doesn't mean that you are completely harmless, but looking at this level of security is relevant for everyone, wherever you are in the world. So what does that mean, this security? How are you going to be protected? And another important question, you might think, well, that NIS2 is interesting, but I have ISO 27001 or ISO 27002 already. So I should be covered, right? The answer is maybe, because it's the same as the box of chocolates as we know from Forrest Gump. We know the movie where Forrest Gump gets the chocolate, bites into it, and he has no idea what's inside. The same is happening if you have a ISO 27001, because it is possible that you are covered, but it might not be the case. And why is that? What you see here is that the ISO 27001, that means that you have all of these security requirements covered. So incident handling is covered, business continuity, FACNIF, and everything is covered except supply chain security. Because in ISO 27001, you can exclude the supply chain security. And that's very important, because If you want to be NIS2 compliant, you cannot exclude this supply chain security. It's part of the common criteria EAL4+. I will explain about that later more. Let me see if there are questions coming in. No, not yet. Okay. Here we go. Then, oh, one page too high. So what's the difference between ISO 27001 and the common criteria EAL4+? The difference is that you can find blind spots within ISO 27001, and in the common criteria, you are not able to exclude it. So that means you must have full control and a description of all your security aspects. And ISO 27001 says it's possible to delegate area as blind spots. So if we look at the landscape of operating systems that are used all over the world, you see that many different operating systems, all the major ones, they have this INAP OS-PP. In other words, the EAL level 1 coverage. That means that their evaluation assurance level is at level 1. And that's nice because that has got a lot of things regarding your product, means that you are secure on that area. But if you also want to have a supply chain, which is security updates, the production, and the company also to be covered, then you need to have your evaluation assurance level on 4+. What is that? What is that certification that I'm talking about, and who is granting it? I hear a bit of noise. Is that okay? I will continue because I think the sound is okay again. It's quite complex to get this EAL4+ certification, because you see here all the different aspects that are part of a common criteria EAL4+. They all need to be locked up. They all need to be certified, checked, and it's not something you can do yourself. You have to find one of the institutions around the world that are doing this for you. And if you are in Germany, that means that you have to go to the BSI, the German institution that does this checkup. And they will check every element in this chain here, and every element has to be strong enough so that your customer data, your customer system is secure. Supply chain evaluation effort. Is it easy to get this certification at EAL level 4? No, it's quite complex because every little supplier that you have must have the check, must have been checked. And therefore, it's not something that you can just simply apply for and get it. It's really hard work to get this certification. Is it necessary to have also your supply chain check marked? Well, maybe not necessary, but we look at it as the triathlon of evaluation. In other words, you can check whether or not your security is safe enough. So you do an internal investigation for your company or your organization. If you don't do it, at some point probably an intruder will come and do this evaluation for you. Therefore, you will might get in big problems. And then if you come in front of a judge, you have to explain how it is that your end customer was damaged by this intruder. And you can take the risk and get wounded. Richard, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you very much for that, Richard. So you can do your evaluation yourself. You can ask or wait till an intruder does it for you, or you can defend it in court. But if you have to defend it in court, it works quite well if you have a state recognized certification, and that is NIS2. And to be at the point of an independent evaluation, it's really helps if you're in front of the judge to say, look, I did what I could because I was using software which had the NIS2 compliancy checkmark. Let's continue. If you have all your certifications, even your NIS2 and your ISOs and everything, does that mean that you can go berserk and do anything you want? No. It still means that you have to realize that if you go do stunts, if you are not taking the right responsibility, that you still can harm your customers. And that means that having this certification is important to have, but it's not 100% covering you. Still, you must have other elements in place as well, and don't act crazy. So this story about the value of certification, the value of certification for software, for open source software, who is talking about this important lessons to people in politics or people at the enterprise customers that are making, that are creating tenders so that other IT companies can reply to it. It is a whole bunch of organizations that are doing this. And why is it better to have open source compared to proprietary in this case? Well, it's not a guarantee again, as most people probably in this audience know, that it is not 100% guarantee that open source makes your software more secure. But by definition, open source software is more secure because of the multi-I element. Does it mean that proprietary software cannot be safe? No, that's not the case. Does it mean that open source always is safe? That's not the case either. But the definition of open source software development is more secure compared to proprietary. So back to the question, who is talking about open source software to the decision makers? In Europe, but also outside of Europe, you see more and more alliances of open source companies. So there is in Europe an umbrella organization for all these country representatives with open source alliances, and that organization is called APPEL. That's a European Open Source Software Business Association. And to be a member of this APPEL, you have to be a company, a country representative of open source companies. So for many years, there is the very successful OS-SCi in Germany, Open Source Business Alliance. In Finland, there is the COS. In the Netherlands, at the moment, I am part of an organization, and we are at the moment founding an organization, Dutch Open Source Business Alliance. There is an organization like that for France, for Sweden, the ESOP in Portugal, and RIOS in Italy. So, in other words, there are at the moment 8 different country representatives representing open source industry to the European Union and beyond. As I said, in the Netherlands, at the moment, I'm very proud to be one of the founding members representing Suse in founding this organization. And the story is a bit more complex because there was already it says underneath in Dutch, Vereniging Open Source Nederland, which is about the same as the Dutch Open Source Business Alliance, that was founded back in 2000, so 25 years ago. But we really saw the need for having a representation within the European Union through to a Dutch organization where several organizations, companies, open source companies, are represented, and therefore you could say, refounded this organization. We renaming it to DOSBA for the international naming. And then there is also Open Forum Europe. Open Forum Europe is an independent think tank where also Suse is proud partner of. All open source companies can become a partner of Open Forum Europe. And that again gives you the possibility to have influence in how there is a lobby going on in Europe. They are independent, and they are not just for open source software, but also for open standards and open source AI. So it's more than just open source software, but it's a great organization based in Brussels that is doing lobby for open source software, and more than that, within Europe. But anywhere in the world, there is activity going around regarding public money, public code. So if public money is being used to create software or to adjust software, that it should be public code as well. So that is something that I personally and many people with me around the world are really working hard for, to get that more and more established. So who is shouting? Who is possible? Who can be an open source ambassador? Who can be an open source policy maker? Everyone can be a policy maker. So if we have now hundreds of people here in this hackathon, which I'm really proud to be a part of, then we all can spread the word that open source and NIS2 compliancy is the best way forward. And in my personal opinion, the only way forward. I would say thank you very much for having this opportunity, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the open source policies, open source lobbying, EU regulations within the European Union and beyond. I'm really looking forward to answer some questions, and if people would like to reach out to me, I'm active on LinkedIn, Mastodon, YouTube, where also I have my own show called the Friday Catch-Up. I released this morning a Friday Catch-Up around the topic of two topics actually: SuseCon, which is happening early March in Orlando, in America, and Open Forum, Open Infra Forum happening in Sweden on 22nd of May. Are there any questions, comments, complaints? Please let me know.
Complaints not, but there was a question.
There is a question. So the question is, Emil, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Great. Wonderful lecture on on the perfect storm. So we have a question. There is a concerned person who says, what is the effect on individual contributors to open source projects? Does it affect individual contributors? Like, I'm not associated with any company, I am trying to contribute, and there's a security flaw in my code or something like that. What happens to such an individual? Because that's something that somebody in the group asked.
Yes, a very good question. Regarding the NIS2 compliance, as I mentioned, that is only applying to the bigger organizations, to the bigger, how do you say that, institutions. As I said, more than 50 people have to be in that organization. And if it's a company with a revenue stream, then it's 10 million or over. So that's for the NIS2. The Cyber Resilience Act is something else. There are within the open source industry several opinions, not always in the same direction, about how valuable it is for open source. I know at several events there was spoken about open source not being completely taken part of the Cyber Resilience Act, and therefore also there is now a strong lobby going on within the European Union through, for example, Open Forum Europe and other important open source organizations like the Linux Foundation, Eclipse Foundation, to make sure that the update on the Cyber Resilience Act, that will have a better protection for open source developers. There are people who know a lot more about this specific topic than I do, but I would definitely feel free, if there's somebody has a question on this, reach out to me and I can bring you in contact with people who know exactly how it is. And I have to be a little bit careful. As I said, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, but there is definitely some discussion about this topic. So it's a very good question. Thank you very much for that, who asked it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions that came in?
No, at the moment, no, but there is a lot of people viewing this, listening to also tomorrow, because it's a little late in some of where our viewers are located. So we could have questions coming up in the morning as well. So.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And for all viewers, we hope to see you tomorrow again.